Hello and welcome to From the BOLN, the Burnley podcast. I'm Simon Evans and with me is Andrew Greaves, Chris Bowden and Paul Woodhouse. No Justin Conley today because he was just so distraught about that performance. He said it's probably better he doesn't go on air and record his feelings after that 4-1 defeat at home to Chelsea. We had some pretty wildly optimistic predictions in our Friday podcast ahead of this game. And none of them came anywhere close to being true, unless you count 4-1 as being in some way close to a 4-1 defeat. It was pretty shocking, wasn't it? Let's get into it, digest it, work it out, see where we've gone with that. I mean, Greavesy, you're back and fit and well.
Well, I have to say, with the predictions, I thought you'd taken my optimism and turned it well past 11. It was up to like 1100, weren't it? I mean, 4-1. I mean, I thought 3-1 were bad, but when I was editing Friday and heard the 4-1, Christ. I mean, where to start? I mean, we've obviously had a bit of back and forth in his WhatsApp group, and that second half, I think it's got to be said, is absolutely unacceptable on any level from any team. I mean, you could make a case for that being the worst 45 minutes of the company era, and I will try and bring some optimism and positivity perhaps later in the episode, but I don't know what, everybody else thinks, but on a basic level, that is players not doing their job. It's as simple as that, isn't it? It's unacceptable. Vincent Kompany will find it unacceptable when the players are locked in the video room down at the Barnfield at Gawthorpe. Hopefully they'll find it unacceptable because, if you carry on like that and you don't do your job, you don't deserve to play. Simple as that. We're going to talk about players who are missing out and not getting a chance. There's a lot of players in that team on Saturday who I'd be sitting on a bench or sitting in the stands for quite a while after that second half because that wasn't good enough by a long shot.
Woody?
No, it wasn't, was it? It was as bad as anything this year, but without the requisite effort. It's one thing, being beaten by these sides, and Chelsea's by no means, we said it about United and we can say it about Chelsea, that's a shit Chelsea side, that we just gave free rein. It's getting quite apparent that sides don't have to come to Burnley and really find that much in by means of a way to try and beat us. They just need to be given the opportunities, and we quite simply just gave them those opportunities and said, "There you go, there's 4. Thanks for coming." And it was fucking awful. And it's been rare to say that under Vinny, but it was absolutely awful.
You agree, Chris?
Well, I'm one of those. I think. The reason Ian Walton didn't get put up before the press whatsoever, and apart from when Sean was unwell that time, it's just his emotions sort of went. It was either too high or too low, where Sean was down the middle. I was pretty raging last night, so I'm probably a bit more toned down today. But it's again, I thought the first half was fine. Yes, Sterling had a couple of openings. He hadn't got tight enough. Coutinho hadn't got tight enough to him. The goals, the equaliser's just raggy, isn't it? But had they gone in at half time 1-0 up, who knows what might have happened? But they've just completely crumbled second half. Give away a really, really stupid penalty. I mean, what on earth is Coutinho doing, making a challenge on it? A player like that who can do you for pace in an instant. You know what's going to happen, and from that moment on, I mean, I thought there were, other than the goal, and the moment where I think Trezor nearly gets in at the back stick from Alderweireld, it was so laboured. It's just, this is the philosophy and this is the way, but there's no sort of zip to the passing.
No.
The goalkeeper, I mean, I'm not going to fault the goalkeeper for any of the goals, blah, blah, blah. I'm not getting involved in that. But his passing is in nowhere near the same league as Muric. And it's laboured, it's inaccurate. You look at the centre-half pairing that we finish with, doesn't do well in the Championship for me. Delquan O'Shea. Nah, not. And especially not. It's so annoying. Like Woody said, Chelsea just haven't had to do anything. You think, the starting lineup, Brohan had a kick. Palmer's done next to nothing, but ended up with a goal and an assist. And, I thought Chelsea knew when to slow play down, and they dictated it probably from like 15, 20 minutes in. Once the goal had the effect of the goal had died down, but it's just that was utterly demoralising. Like they're the poorest Chelsea side we've seen in Burnley's time in the Premier League era.
No doubt about that.
Yeah. No Cech, no Drogba, no Terry, no Lampard. They've got good players who could become very good players, but they're not there yet, and they're certainly not a team.
Very, very reminiscent of that.
No, I mean, for me, like after...
We said this about United. They've got some players, but they're not a team. Now, Chelsea, I mean, Woody had it right. They've shown up. We've given them 4 free passes and sent them back to London with 3 points and probably kick-started their season. It's the first time, I think, for about 18 months that they've won 2 on the road, consecutive games on the road, beat Fulham, obviously, on Monday night. And by all accounts, Marco Silva was saying, Fulham weren't quick enough. They weren't sharp enough. It weren't the standard they expected. You mentioned laboured. I was watching Brighton versus Liverpool, and I don't want to kind of harp on about goalkeepers. I'm the same as you, Chris. Can't fault Trafford. I think he's getting better, as a goalkeeper. He's not really had a lot to do, but when he's needed to cover, places, he's covered it. But Verbruggen for Brighton, and Brighton did get caught a couple of times, so it's not like there's this perfect goalkeeper out there. Raya, again, got caught for Arsenal a couple of times. But it's the way they do it, Basically, their centre-halves go really wide, and their fullbacks invert inside. Ours, we kind of end up with a line of 4, which then confuses where's the ball going to, and everything just slows down. The whole point of that goalkeeper playing out from the back like we used to do with Moor, which is that your fullbacks invert, you might drop Cullen a bit further back, but then you're basically opening up that kind of whole line, whereas we're almost sat on top of Trafford for whatever reason, maybe because his distribution is not so good. And I think, Simon, you put it in our WhatsApp group because I was watching the same international feed as you. A couple of times the commentator was saying Burnley again wasting possession with that little 20, 30 yard ball, trying to get it into midfield, and Chelsea just sat there going, yeah, thank you very much, lads, we'll take that. There's just none of that kind of, there's not that ability to hit. Last year we hit a Teller. This year we could hit an Odebear, we could hit a Trezor, we could hit a Koleosho, we could hit a Zarori, we could hit a Brun Larson, we could hit a Foster. You think about them, QPR, I think, was one. Coventry, the goal for Coventry against, which I think was a year ago yesterday. The Coventry, or maybe a year ago today, the Teller winner at Coventry, the long ball over the top. That's the kind of thing, Preston away. All of these games where the goalkeeper is pinging these long balls and really testing. I mean, Cucurella, I don't know what he's doing for the goal, then gets himself a booking. Could be a red, but it's a booking. And then we at no point then think to ourselves, hang on a minute here, he's on his wrong side because he's playing right back rather than left back. We could get at him here and we could give him a lot of problems. Not once did we get to a point where we put him under pressure and tempted him into a second yellow card tackle. If anything, Odebear standing in front of the free kick picking up his own button.
Like Dalot.
You know what I mean? It's that. So many times, and again, we've talked about this before, distribution from the defenders isn't good enough. If you've not got Bayer, it's just not, you're not hitting them wings with the ball over the top from O'Shea. Or Delco. I didn't think Delco had that bad a game. He looks a bit wooden. He's probably a bit ring rusty. O'Shea, I mean, listen, Sterling's quick. We know I wouldn't want to go up against him. The way he ghosted past O'Shea, I think, for the 3rd goal, maybe. Wow. I mean, that is he better than Luke McNally? We've sent McNally to Stoke. Why have we gone out and spent money? If we have got a limited budget, and, there's no signs that we had a limited budget. But if we've spent...
Not sure he's better than Kevin Long, to be honest.
He is the Kevin Long. Surely he's your cup centre-half. He's your, And we saw it, didn't we, against Spurs when he got sucked into Son with the ball over the top. Sucked into the ball, left Son at the back post for Son's 2nd, I think it was, or maybe even the 1st goal. It's just, I just at the minute, and again, we'll try and come on to something positive. Where's the identity? What are we? It's like I mentioned Rovers. Inability to play out from the back. We mentioned.
Well, let me throw this one in. Let me throw this one in. Yeah, when it comes to identity, let me throw this one in. Right, we just won a game at Luton Town. Right, one of the reasons why we were optimistic that things might be starting to click is we'd won a game, and you think the team's going to be confident. The teams had worked together at Luton in a tough game, and you felt that there's something to build on there. And I was still confident on Saturday morning, when I was watching JJ Watt introducing Americans to Benny and Hott and all the rest. And then that team sheet landed. And I don't know about everyone else, but I suspect similar feeling. All the optimism just went out of me as soon as I saw that team sheet. I thought, what is he doing? There's just no need for this. All right, Bayer, that's a massive blow, losing a player like that for an injury because he's by a country mile our best central defender. We've got this worrying situation again where Ekdal's stock is rising every day because he's not in the team. This seems, that's a sign of a team that's struggling whenever anyone's out of a team for 3 or 4 games like Foster was. They suddenly become superstars. But I'm looking at that team and thinking, all right, you've lost one of your best players through injury. Why mix it up everywhere else? Why? There's an international break coming, so there's absolutely no reason for resting people for physical reasons, really, unless there's an injury, yeah? But I'm just looking at why, what on earth made you think that Vitinho, who you didn't trust to defend right back in the Championship, is going to be the man to nullify Raheem Sterling? The 2 wingers he's brought in, and we can, it's not picking on individuals because you could, as Greaves has just said, really, you look at the whole team and the whole problems. But, the 2 wingers he's brought in, if he was going to bring in a winger for Koleosho, and we'd spoken about maybe it's time to give Koleosho, a little, not a break for physical reasons, but just let him come out of the side for a little bit. Brune Larsson's been knocking on the door with his substitute appearances. Obviously, the goal at Luton was a big part of that. He's been knocking on the door, but he doesn't get the call up. Zaroury's been knocking on the door, we hope, and we think, on the basis of his performance at Salford and just in what he's done at the club in the past. He's not even on the bench. Instead, we get Audebert and Trezor, who, all right, Audebert scored a goal, but the pair of them were like miles off the level that you need for that position. I mean, Trezor was totally anonymous. Audebert showed little flashes, but it just hasn't worked. But it was just completely unnecessary to make all those changes, in my opinion. I mean, what's going through his mind, Woody?
I don't know, Sam. I don't know. Maybe it's guidance from living under Pep for a while or Mancini or whatever it may be. But yeah, it seemed like too many changes that weren't necessarily all required. And then you could argue that maybe he was a little bit unlucky with who he had to take off, who he had to bring off, which exacerbated those changes. Obviously Dakhil having to come off at half time, for whatever reason, etc. Then still bringing Vitinho off, doesn't exactly speak well for those changes, does it? And like you're saying, up front, yeah, apart from Audebert's goal, we saw absolutely nothing. There was a couple of flashes in the first half from Trezor, and then it was that second half thing again where it just all went extremely flat and passive, and we've got to make some changes, by which time we 3-1 down. And I couldn't work it out, and it just looked worse as the game went on as a decision. So I don't know what's going through his head, other than he's an inveterate tinkerer. I don't know.
He is a tinkerer, isn't he? He is. I mean, I don't want to, start jumping on, some anti-company thing because, what he's achieved last season was absolutely fantastic, and he's got so much credit in the bank. But you really look at it and think, like, it'd be one thing if we'd come up and we're playing the company way and we're playing that nice football and we're just a little bit, as this word keeps getting used over and over again, a little bit naive and we get caught out and we lose 2-1 to Chelsea when we were on top and it's the kind of game we would have won in the Championship. It's not. We weren't even competing. I mean, I don't see this good football either. Nothing seems to be working in that game, Chris.
No, bar the goal, which is fabulously well worked. So Trezor sort of laid it off, Vitinho's taken it at full pelt, and Foster's weaved his way through and, He's put it through Cucurella's legs into the corner, but I think that was the only shot on target in the first half. So it's almost, they've ripped through Chelsea, and then let's whether that's a purposeful thing. Let's hold on to this, because as the half sort of grew on, Chelsea just without having much in the way of decent opportunities, just sort of began to grind their way into the game. But I say I'm old school in my team selection. If Brun Larson, who's been showing flashes, comes on, scores a winning goal, and you think, where's the reward? There's got to be a reward for performance. And if the reward for his performance is being left out and not even first change again, you're like, well, where's the incentive to do well? Because I keep going back to Foden at Manchester City. He'd score a couple of goals and get left out, and you're thinking, well, there has to be an incentive to stay in the side, to a good performance, goals, some form of impact. But when you're making that and not getting selected, I say Odegaard turned out to be a decent pick. Trezor needs playing into some sort of form and fitness, and I don't think he was as bad as some people have made out. Trezor, flashes of real quality without overly impacting the game, but there's just been too much change, and it's not. We're not saying this we are saying this after another defeat, but we were saying this in the summer. Too many changes to a squad that we thought had a decent chance of doing well in the top flight. Failure to turn, Teller, Harwood Bellis, Maatsen into permanent signings, chasing O'Shea, like Greasy said, but there was McNally's already on the books, signing wingers for fun, and maybe not signing the right. Townsend would have been a perfect fit for this, young naive side. He could have maybe bought some of these lads a bit of time. It's just none of it makes sense at the moment. I'm back to being extremely downhearted about it all.
Greavesy, your role here is to cheer us up with points of positivity. You've got a task on your hands today.
Yeah, self-appointed director of optimism. Yeah. I agree with Chris. I don't think Trezor was quite as bad. I was actually quite impressed. He put a lot of work in defensively. There were a couple of times when he really managed to get us out of tight situations when defending. I agree with Chris. I think someone like Townsend, it's you're buying that time, you're buying that ability to allow young lads to get experience. Because I think I've said it before. It's almost as though he's trying to give his squad, who are not very experienced at this level, most of them not even experienced in this country, a crash course in experience. And he's thinking, well, actually, if, he'll have a big, I'm sure he will, because I've got one, a big kind of piece of paper which has all the winnable games, all the games which are kind of 50-50, you could get some, and on there will be a United away, there'll be a, Brighton away, which in his mind, he thinks, actually, we might not get 3 points, but that's a point. And there'll be games which he thinks, if we get out of them, it's not going to really impact our season. Now, we put out a graphic earlier that I'd knocked up this morning about our previous 5 Turf Moor results. Sorry.
Hold on a minute. Do you really have a big giant piece?
Not
of
on my
paper
wall, but I have. Well, it's not a giant one. I have kind of scraps of paper with games and things like that on, because I am. Woody's our chief video analyst.
You've got to share that. The secret's to our season.
But I have games which I kind of, Chelsea. Despite you lot and your optimistic ways, I thought we'd get a positive result, but it wasn't. It's not on my list of. It's not on my list of games which we'd win. That's borne out when we look at the last 5 Turf Moor Premier League games against this 5. And I just wonder whether, if these games are spread throughout the season, so United at home comes in November, City at home, perhaps his first game at season, you take a defeat, you keep the score down. Spurs at home is April. Chelsea at home is January, Saturday in January, nice warm Saturday, turn up. Are these 5 results in isolation something to worry about? Or is it the perception that because they're the first 5 home games that we're suddenly going, shit. Now, something else on Match of the Day, this is the first time in the last 3 Premier League seasons where we've won one of us first 7 games. Now, I get it. The other 2 seasons are 50-50. One we get relegated, one we just about survive. But I just wonder whether we're getting a little bit carried away, and I'll come on to performances, with the sequence rather than what the individual results actually, individually these results, these 5 results across the whole season, if spread out, probably you wouldn't bat an eyelid. We've been beaten by Chelsea, he says, looking at his little map, 4-0, 4-2, 4-0, 3-0. So they're not unusual results, are they? City, 3-0, 2-0, 2-0, 4-1, 1-0. They're not unusual results in terms of win, lose, draw. Spurs, we've got the best record against Spurs. 2 wins and a draw in the last 5 against Spurs at home. But I just wonder whether, and I'm getting all kind of arty-farty now, and I kind of think to myself, I was thinking about Sean Dyche earlier, as I often do. And Sean versus Vincent is process versus project. And we were sick of the process. We wanted a project. We were sick of that. And I just wonder whether, is this the price that we pay? And that comes not 15 minutes after I said that the second half was completely unacceptable. So I'm not talking about performance, because there's lots and lots we need to improve on. But I just wonder if after 38 games we're sat here going, you know what? That Andrew Greaves is an absolute football genius, and why he's not managing a top-level Premier League club, I will never know.
Have you got a process wall chart as well? I'd quite like to see the process.
Well, you know the what's it? You know them kind of mass murderer bunkers where they've got the string attaching the various people and the maps and the bloodstained letters and stuff. It's like that, but it's got a picture of Ashley Barnes in the middle, and everything comes off Barnes.
You've been watching Manifest, haven't you?
That's it.
You know what he reminds me of? He reminds me a bit of, and I think I've mentioned this before, when Norwich came up, and it was 2019, and Norwich came up, and I covered their first game at Anfield of the season, and they played brilliant football in the Championship, and I think they'd won by a comfortable margin. Impressed a lot of people. Came up, playing it around at the back, got caught out early on, lost 4-1 at Liverpool. I decided to have a quick glance at what their season was like early on, because they finished that season with 20-odd points, one of the lowest records, right? So they lost 4-1 to Liverpool in the first game. The first home game was against Newcastle United. They beat them 3-1. The next home game was at home to Chelsea. Tough start. Liverpool and Chelsea, 2 of your first 3 games. They lost that game 3-2. Right, and it was 2-2 in the 68th minute. Then they lost at West Ham. They beat Manchester City at home 3-2. Then they lost to Sean Dyche's Burnley 2-0. Went on a bit of a bad run then. They lost at home to Aston Villa 5-1, which is a similar sort of result. And then they drew 0-0 at Bournemouth. They won away at Everton in the first 10 games as well. So they didn't have such a bad start. The problem they had was right at the end of the season. But they do remind me of that team, and that's a team that, like I say, beat Manchester City in its second game and nearly got a draw with Chelsea.
So a bit of Premier League experience. They did a Pookie and did Grant Hanley and people like that. And it's the pressure you put on now. The pressure on that Luton game last Tuesday was ridiculous. And I'm not having these free hits. There's so much pressure on against Palace now. Pressure on against Brentford, pressure on against Bournemouth. There is no margin for error. You've got to be. Like I say, the first 10 games of these seasons in the past, we usually picked up 3 or 4 draws, maybe. We grind our way to, we bore someone to tears and get a 0-0. Something like that by staying in games. Yesterday, we haven't stayed in the game. How many people? I'd never criticise anyone who's paid the money leaving. But how many people left when the third goal went in? Yesterday, they're streaming out. And a few of them are tired already. They've seen this before. They don't want to see much more of it. At least give these teams. I mean, United, we still wouldn't have scored if we're playing, but at least you were in the game till the final whistle. But
here's my question for you. Here's my question for you, Woody. And it's kind of not been said, but it's been part of a few of the critiques there of that second half. But I raised the phrase yesterday, team spirit. Other people have said mentality. We do seem to be, to me, a bit of a soft touch. We concede a goal and fall to pieces, it feels like. Is there a problem? Have they lost belief, do you think? What do you feel about that side of it?
It's a difficult one, isn't it? That you can try and pick up on body language, etc., but you've got to kind of see a bit of a pattern emerging, haven't you? And it kind of does seem that after that first one goes in, yes, there's a brief flash of a reaction, and then once we get down to maybe conceding 2, then that's it. And heads seem to have gone yesterday. You know, it's I don't know. I'm a little bit loath to say, yeah, team spirit's gone, etc. Because the next thing you start accusing folks of is lost the dressing room, etc., and it suddenly starts getting a bit silly, doesn't it? But I think we'll see. I think we could see that definitely over the next couple of weeks or so. If it is a pattern and it's something that's going to develop, I think we're going to see it fairly shortly.
I think in terms of the mentality, definitely, I think some of that comes from the fact that last year, those players who were last year had never had to confront adversity, had they? If you think about it, Sheffield United, yet then all of a sudden the pressure is ramped up because we've got Rovers at home. Last game before the World Cup, straight after that, the defeat against Watford, we were still finding his feet, and arguably came out and picked up some decent results, albeit too many draws in the first parts. And then the defeat at the end of the season, QPR, I think it was QPR. It then almost becomes a bit like, well, perhaps we've relaxed because we're going to win the championship and we want to win it at Ewood, so conveniently getting beat by QPR kind of allows us to kind of do that. So I do think part of it is, and we keep talking about experience and naivety. They're just naive because they don't know how to react to adversity. We're not used to this. We were never used to going, apart from Sunderland away, going behind or anything like that. And I think that from a point of view is part of the issue. I mean, Chris, you've seen enough Burnley sides and obviously been there and spoken to managers and things. Sean's reaction to all this was just kind of getting back to basics. When if you think about that Everton game, everyone you spoke to after that Everton Boxing Day game, it was, well, we had a meeting and we just got back to basics and things like that. That's kind of the thing I guess Vincent needs to do with this squad, because at the minute we're not getting the basics right, are we?
They're not, no. But I'd sort of say, I mean, in terms of mentality, I mean, I look at occasions like, you're losing at home to Reading and they're, killing the game, and you come back to win that. You're losing in injury time against Rotherham and you come back and you win that. And to come back from that hiding at Sheffield United the way they did, and I think that team had enough adversity and came through it magnificently, I'd say, last season. And even this, Tuesday night, talking about the pressure piled on these games, everyone's heart sank, when the Luton equaliser goes in. And to then respond in that manner within 60 seconds, I think that says a great deal. It's disheartening. Like I said, we're seeing a pattern against big hitters who have got these elite players, maybe not elite teams just yet. That you're like, you're giving your all and it's not quite happening, and these players are just turning a moment of magic, bang, you're down, bang, it's 2. And it's that must be, it's hard for anyone playing the game of football when that happens, when it's almost like, what's the point? My best isn't good enough as it stands. And then you start, the third goal again, it's into Aaron Ramsey's, as at Newcastle, loses possession. Berger, misses out in a challenge, which, that can happen. He's gone into it, blah, blah, blah. It's 3-1, and, it could have been 4 and 5 after that. But I think there's enough mental toughness in this team. It's disheartening. I think we're all disheartened. But it's now where we go from now on up, talking about going back to basics, I'm one of these who sort of like, you look at Joe, the Hart, Heaton, latterly Pope debate. I think Joe Hart didn't do a fat lot wrong in that first half of the season when he was in the side. 2018-19, he, I mean, at Crystal Palace, it would have been a cricket score, but for him. But something just wasn't quite right, and Sean put Tom Heaton back in. They go 8 games unbeaten, and that 8-game unbeaten run effectively secured safety. Whether that it's worth one of those, let's have a look at Murich just to see how it goes. That's for the manager. That's why he earns his money.
It is. I mean, what we've got coming up is an international break where he can really, get to work on a lot of things. And then we've got Brentford away on the 21st, and then Bournemouth, and then Palace at home. Those are the 3 games that we've been saying we're not making any big sweeping predictions about this season or definitive viewpoints until bonfire night after those 3 games. But let's throw this one out there as the last one. I mean, he's got this international break now. The bit of me that remains slightly optimistic is our away games in those sort of games, Forest and Luton, have been where we have been a bit more scrappy away from home, where we don't seem to feel the need to try and play our way of football, but we battle and scrap and play a bit more in a more realistic fashion in some respects, less open anyway. What would you be looking to do if you were company this next week and a half and you're working on the training ground? What are you prioritising ahead of those 3 games, which really are becoming like 3 very crucial games? Because if they go badly, we really are in deep trouble, aren't we? What are you looking at, Woody, as your priority in terms of what needs fixing?
I mean, it's those individual mistakes, isn't it, that we've seen throughout the season so far. There's always something that's going slightly awry. I'd like to make sure that he's got his preferred back four, whatever they may be, and seeing people, come for the ball a little bit better. Yeah, I don't know what I'd necessarily like to see. I'd like to see us get back to, playing that front foot football that we relatively, use for that. And I think we'll get there. We'll get there something like.
Agree with you? You're in your tracksuit on Gawthorpe next week. What's your main messages?
I think it's taking more care with the football. I think its ball retention at the minute is just woeful. I mean, I think one of the things we prided ourselves on last year was possession football, but we're conceding possession far too much. Now, part of the problem is, of course, is that both Trafford and Murich will be away for 2 weeks with their international side, so you can't really work on that passing. But you get, you bring Charlie Casper in, you bring your other lads in, and you kind of work with that back four, or as much of that back four. And it's that kind of getting them distribution patterns right, because I just think it's that us, turning the ball over too quickly. We're not giving ourselves a chance to push up because we're messing about with it at the back. We're not getting beyond the zone 18-yard line, and all of a sudden there's a ball dinked in, don't even reach halfway, and they're coming back onto us. And that's the problem. You've got to keep the ball until you at least get over the halfway line, because if you don't, and everything's coming back, you've got 2 or 3 opposition players already in the advanced roles. So you're already up against it, because your midfielders who are there to kind of shield your back four, if that's your Cullen, your Berger and your Brownhill, whoever it might be, they're already beyond the opposition players. So when the ball comes back in, they're caught in no man's land between the opposition ball holder and the attackers who are already behind you, bearing down on your defence. And we've been caught so many times. Villa, Chelsea, Spurs, all of these games where we were caught exactly like that. So, yeah, for me, it is that ball retention. It's that getting back to short passes. We're so sloppy in possession. It is just ridiculous how sloppy we are in possession. Simple balls that should always be on. No pass really, at the minute it should be more than 10, 15 yards, which that means if we have to go back to basics and, and looking for easy balls, even if you get the ball back, It doesn't matter. Just keep possession. Take the sting out of it. We're not taking the sting out of it. We're not getting a breather. Everything is just coming back. And some of that starts with that laboured playing out from the back. Some of it is just basic kind of, passes inside that don't reach a centre midfielder. Or a centre midfielder has to stretch for it or to challenge to get it. Really, really simple stuff that shouldn't be happening at Premier League level. Decision making. It's what Mick said. It's what Georgie Boyd said. Decision making. We're making rash decisions. We're making emotional decisions at the minute, especially when we go behind. Everyone's head just goes. It goes to pot.
Chris, what are you working on?
Similar in terms of possession, but just tempo, zip. Company balls based on finding space, utilising space. And to do that, you've got to move the ball quicker. Like we did in the Championship. You moved it. Whether it was Muric picking a pass or we've got to move it quicker with more purpose to the passing. And like I said, at times it's almost overplaying. But they've also got to be not afraid. If you're under pressure, like yesterday, you're being pressed by Conor Gallagher that's still going in 7 minutes of injury time, pressing Charlie Taylor in the left-back position. His energy, like I spoke about last week, is phenomenal. You've got to be able to play through that. You've got to move the ball quickly. And again, like once you're in behind the likes of a Conor Gallagher, happy days. Get the ball to the wide players quicker. Get the ball to an Alderburn and say, go on. It got Cucurella on toast yesterday. Give it him again. Go again. Every time, fair enough if he beats you this time. Go again, because the next time you beat him and he brings you down, he's off. Or you create, you score or create a goal or something like that. But we've just got to be far more zip into our play. It's too laboured.
A lot to work on then for Vincent Kompany during the international break. One little clue we do know what he's going to be doing during the international break is he's got a video call with JJ Watt to discuss what lessons can be learned from the NFL for Burnley's set pieces, which is a fascinating one. It's actually something Gareth Southgate did before the 2018 World Cup in Russia. And if you remember, England scored quite a few goals from set pieces with blocking techniques. So it's nothing new there, but it's probably worth a while doing. Like, just to finish on a lighter note, Woody, what did you make of JJ Watt's latest media tour popping up on the Jimmy Fallon show, which is a huge talk show in America, with his it wasn't actually a Benny and Hot, was it? But what did you make of it all?
I didn't actually see that. Was it another fake Benny? Was it fake hot water and fake Benny again? Was it just fireball and a little bit of cold water? Because I'm getting pissed off with this.
It was about Greavesy spotted it was a B&B, wasn't it? The Benedictine and brandy.
Oh, good Lord.
Yeah, Benny and brandy.
People absolutely Fruit Loop.
Yeah, which apparently was a massive. I know. You used to be able to get it in England, but I've not seen it. I was searching for it, and it only looks like it's available for export.
And rightly so.
So it's the Americanized. It's Americanized Benny. Yeah.
I may try some tonight.
Yeah, I think we could all do. I think we could all do with a drink after this weekend, couldn't we? Well, that's it for this time on From the BO End. We'll be back as usual on Friday, hopefully with a special guest and hopefully with something to break things up a little bit and have a chat that doesn't involve us looking at all the things that are going wrong this season. Maybe take a broader look at Burnley things. There's also the small matter of a new investment in the club. Reports of a large investment made, which we need to find out more about, really, before we can talk about with any sort of detail. We'll try and look into that for you for next time. Until then, please do follow us on social media at BHole Podcast and tell your friends about our show and give us a little rating and so on. It all makes a difference, and it is making a difference, judging by the data we get, that we are reaching more and more Burnley fans. And thanks very much for the feedback. And we'll speak to you again next week. All the best.